Great, thank you so much, Michelle. And up next, we have our final presenter of this panel before we'll open up to ideas and thinking about 2020 and all of the opportunity and challenges presented by all three platforms. We're really excited to be hosting RJ Rammy today of Plain Talk History. It's actually totally fortuitous that he's joining us today for the symposium for his Michelle's can't keep track of the number of symposiums she's been to, and RJ, we just met while we were, Ted and I were up at the National Council of Public History in Hartford, Connecticut. And we were so impressed with your energy and all that you're bringing to a really creative platform. And so we're really excited to be kind of viewing your site and thinking about how it can be incorporated in digital collaboration going forward. So welcome, RJ.
I'm happy to try to do that. Should I rush through? I'm happy to do that too.
Let's keep it to 10 minutes.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, I will try.
Okay.
I will try. I am so excited to be here, and I'm also so nervous because there's a lot of people here. And I told Bianca it's especially like nerve-wracking when you know the audience is really smart. So I will try not to mess up. My name is RJ. I run a design studio in San Francisco. I'm a technologist and a creative designer. And I only talk about big ideas, as Allie knows. Like I don't do subtle. So today, my big idea for the group is that you have permission to tell difficult history. And in fact, you didn't need my permission. You always had it. And that's because the public is ready for it. No, actually, the public is really hungry for it. And I hope in the next 10 minutes I can convince you of that. So in all of 2 months ago, I launched a new project, which is not my studio's project. This is a project for all of us to guide a different way of telling history. And I'm calling it Plain Talk History. And this is what it looks like. It's a very easy URL, plaintalkhistory.com. And you know, there's a lot of like introductory text right now, but essentially you get down to an imaginary list of lessons about American history that I wish will be completed someday in the distant future. There's only 2 that are actual lessons right now. But you can imagine things like, how did the Kingdom of Hawaii become a state? And I just want to point out, it works on your cell phone. It's actually very important to me that everything on this website will be accessible on a cell phone. So, in fact, you can look at it right now, and if you're texting your friend, I'll just think you're really excited about my project. I have a board of advisors that I spent most of this year assembling just to start. I hope to expand in the future. And for now, it's hosted by my studio. It's on a server. It doesn't cost a ton of money to run open source software. In fact, it runs on WordPress. To be a little geeky right now, it runs on WordPress, and technically there's a little piece that runs on Omeka, which are both open source, which means I don't pay anything for it and never will pay anything for it. But it's kind of agnostic about how we build it. So one of the lessons coming is actually another WordPress site, because it's going to be a way to interact with different archival materials that have been digitized, so you can read and highlight from the primary sources. Another lesson is just customized JavaScript, and it's a little bit cinematic, and but it's just web browser stuff. And the next one could be whatever. It could be based on history pin. It could be based on your story, our story. The point is really to be a directory of really high quality history. So let's take a look at one of them to show you what I meant about difficult history. This is Mr. Monroe Work, who worked in Tuskegee, Alabama in the early 1900s. And what is this lesson about, which you can barely read, but it's a lesson on all the known US lynchings of people of color in the United States for a high school audience. And essentially, it was original, it's not original research, but it takes original archival material, which had been assembled by an archivist in Tuskegee, Alabama, and puts it on a digital map, puts it in a digital platform, which is what we created. I'll take you very briefly through the exhibit, but there's a number of empathetic moments in this lesson plan that, in fact, anticipates that it will be difficult. It may be difficult for white audiences who are not aware of it. It will certainly be difficult for people who have been subject to the structural racism of our country. So I always do want to pause for a moment that I'm about to talk, there's not going to be anything graphic or disturbing to look at, but these ideas are in fact disturbing. And I don't need to tell anybody in this room that history is very powerful. I've given this talk before and people have had emotional reactions. So if you feel upset or you need to leave the room or you want to punch me in the face, I completely understand and I do honor that. But for example, people can explore the map, and this is the Great Salt Lake you can see on the left side. And the line, if you can see through it, is the Transcontinental Railroad. But if people zoom in here, you can learn about the Rock Springs Massacre in 1885. And Mr. Ba and 78 of his co-workers had their houses destroyed when they were attacked for breaking a strike of the Union Pacific Coal Department. And he and 27 of his comrades were killed. Here, jumping to California, the great state of California, here in Truckee, California, as many people know, the Truckee method of expulsion of Chinese communities. A fire had broken out in the Chinatown, mysteriously had broken out in the Chinatown, and good people of the world rushed to get some water and try to put it out. And the town fathers decided that there was no way that enough water from the river was going to save Chinatown. So instead they arranged for the train car to roll in between Chinatown and the river to protect the rest of the city from burning. To jump to yet another place in the country and different color victims, but the same kind of thing. This is the Port Veneer Massacre in Texas, where a group of young men and young boys were rounded up and murdered due to some of the tensions with the Anglo ranchers on the border. And then finally, the mainstream narrative of lynching is African Americans in the South, and this is one piece of, Alabama is highlighted just for context, but this is, one piece of the South for about 75 years of violence in the American South. But the lesson isn't only about the dark part. In fact, it's framed around Monroe Work, my hero, who was an archivist, or actually he was a sociologist, but he ended up documenting the names of all of these people. And the reason we have the names for a map today is because you can suspect he knew what he was doing, which is he was preserving this for a time when people would recognize what had happened. But you also meet the other heroes. Certainly when in dark times there are people who are doing great things. So you can meet Ida Wells, you can meet Mary Turner. You learn a little bit about them and the work that they were doing to stop this atrocity. You learn about Wing Hing v. Eureka, which is the foundation of case law in the United States for the idea of reparations, that if you destroyed a property, you must repair it, you must offer reparations. So literally the root of reparations law comes from this case. And then finally, like any good exhibit, well, I just punched you in the face with a lot of dark history, but it calls on the reader to reflect on this and discuss it. In fact, one of the suggestions is that reach out to two people that you know and ask them what they think. The idea here is to engage with this history. So far, it had the fortune of being picked up by, it's a bit of a hot topic in today's political climate, so it did get picked up by the Smithsonian Magazine and the Huffington Post, which generated a bit of traffic. So I was proud that 136 people who I'm sure did not wake up that morning to talk about racial violence found themselves engaging with racial violence that day. Finally, I just want to share with you I did not solicit input on my project. In fact, I was afraid it was all going to be hate mail. But what I did do is lurk on social media to see what people were saying about my project. And I have literally hundreds of these screenshots of what people were saying, but I'll share just a few of them. And many of them are from white audiences. Wow, powerful, disturbing. Yeah, we had some dark history. This is almost too much to process. Oh, it looks like my county is on there. I was not aware. That's actually a very common reaction that people had. It's like, I just didn't know. This isn't my mother, but this is sort of her reaction. It was like, oh my God, like I had no idea. Like to see them all on the map was kind of blow. Again, I had no idea that 4 Italians, an Asian American, and a Native American were lynched in Mississippi. And then they're posting pictures on the map. Like social media is now like filled with pictures of people acknowledging the violence of white supremacy. I particularly like this one. It says, "I see you, California," and that's referring to the fact that California has at least as many lynchings as Arkansas. You know, we think of it as a liberal state, but it certainly people tried very hard to make it a place only for white folks for a long, long time. And then again, some just deeply thoughtful things. This is why Black Lives Matter. There should be a plaque at every one of these sites. We must live with our history. And again, none of this was prompted. These are just random people from the public who don't protect their Facebook feed. I am going to skip through another one, and in conclusion, I will leave you with, we all must remember that students can't learn what really happened until a state board approves it. Oh, heck no. Every student has a phone that gives them access to the entire universe of information. So I'm not willing to wait until a state board. I think the state of Texas just last fall said it is okay to talk about slavery as being the cause of the Civil War. We're not going to wait for them to get around to the 1882 Exclusion Act. So again, you have permission to tell these histories.